Friday at the funeral luncheon, somebody asked me if the sermon was going to be good today. I said, I'd like to think they always are. Then, after last night, and once again, we're entering the season of having to follow music. We really need to rearrange the bulletin. So I want to start with a brief story. It happened this week. It wasn't a long time ago when I was young. But just this very week, got a letter from my insurance company. Actually, it's Rachel's insurance company, so I'm going to blame her. I got a letter from them letting me know that a medicine that I take was no longer going to be covered by the prescription plan, and that I needed to talk to the doctor to figure out what we were going to do. So I called the doctor and then wasn't able to talk to her right away. So I looked at the letter a little more, and I called the insurance company to find out more information about why they were doing this. And that turned into about a 38-minute phone call. At least 30 of which was spent on hold. And you get to the whole end of that phone call, and the answer from the guy is, well, you can disregard that letter. It was sent by mistake. And I got off the phone. I was very polite on the phone, and I got off the phone. And Rachel got home at that point, and he said, I was just on the phone with a bunch of idiots. And that leads me into this week's message. A few weeks ago, I want to start by testing your memory. A few weeks ago, we went through Paul's 8 simple rules for being a Christian. If you remember those. Anybody remember the 5th rule? Good reaction? Okay. 5th rule, rule number 5, being a Christian. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear. That was Paul. I summed it up by just saying, don't talk smack. And I bring that up today because James, in his epistle reading this morning, was focusing on that same idea, except at a little bit greater length and greater depth. And once you get past, the metaphors about bits and bridles and rudders and ships and all of that stuff, you get to James talking about the tongue itself. And he doesn't pull any punches, does he? James tells us that the tongue is a restless evil full of deadly power, or deadly poison, that nobody can tame. Sounds pretty serious. You read that, and you read all of the other things he says about the tongue and about how we talk and all of that. And the first, there's a couple of things that happen. The first is you might think, James, maybe you should switch to decaf before you start writing. And the second thing that might happen is you might think about what he said about needing to watch what you say and watch the words that you use, and you might think, that is super great advice for somebody that I know. Because when it comes to knowing when to keep your mouth shut, and when it comes to realizing it is actually okay to have an unexpressed thought, a lot of us hear that and we think, yeah, I know exactly in my life who could benefit from a healthy dose of keep quiet. Neighbor, relative, co-worker, family member even, distant family member. That annoying person that just keeps popping up in your Facebook feed somehow and you're not sure why. Got somebody in mind? A before I ask for names, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as James. So I want to do a little exercise, a survey. Now, when you're on customer service and you get to the end and they do the survey, I enjoy doing those. Quick survey, 3 questions. First, I want you to think about conversations that you've had this past week with family members. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being almost none of them and 5 being most of them, how many of those conversations involved something negative? I was going to ask for him. Now, that negativity could be directed at somebody that you're talking to. It could be about somebody else that you both know. Could even be about some experience that you had, like talking to customer service. How many of those conversations with family members involve some negativity? 1 to 5. Got a number? Okay. Remember that number. Now we'll go a little different way. Think about conversations that you may have had this past week with friends or neighbors or co-workers. On that same 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is almost none of the conversations and 5 is most of them, how many of those conversations involve negativity? How many of them included or even maybe revolved around a problem or a complaint or a conflict with somebody? Got a number? Add that to the last number that you have. And now for this last survey question, we're going to sneak up on James from a different direction. Think about any of the business interactions that you've had this week. At the store, at work, maybe on the phone. Think about those transactions that you had, and specifically, I want you to think about positive ones. A positive interaction you had with somebody. Anybody have positive interactions with people? Okay. Now we're going to flip the scale on you. This time, 1 means almost all of them, all of those interactions, and 5 means almost none of them. And I'm going to ask, how many of those positive interactions did you tell somebody about? How many times did you, talking to a friend or a neighbor or a family member, say, I was just on the phone with so-and-so, and it was such a great conversation. They really helped me. Got a number? Add that one to the last one. So we have a low of 3 and a maximum of 15. Anybody want to give me a number?
12.
12? Okay.
525,600.
That's a big number. So thinking about 12, or something like that, or 525,000.
I think she was counting in minutes of the conversations.
Oh, okay. That would make sense. Thinking about those numbers, then, does that surprise you at all? I don't know about you, but in my experience, it is way too easy to get caught up in negativity. It is way too easy to focus on problems and mistakes that other people have made, instead of focusing and talking about what's going right and who's doing well. It seems to be human nature. It's way too easy to get on Facebook and rant about a problem or a person or an issue, instead of getting on and talking about solutions or talking about people who want to do the right thing and are trying to do the right thing. And I'm going to go down that rabbit hole for just a minute, because I think It's something to say. Somewhere along the line in this country, and I'm not sure when it happened or how, but I have this feeling that social media and the internet are part of it, at least. But somewhere along the line in this country, we lost the idea that somebody could think differently than us and not be an idiot or be evil. Somewhere along the line, we lost our empathy as a society. We lost our empathy for people who are different from us, who think differently, who have different values. And when I say us, I mean whichever us you want to consider yourself a part of in that conversation. And many of us seem to have lost all tolerance for people who disagree with us. And the concept of debating ideas has been discarded, and it's now replaced by this kind of drive for total victory, which means that you win by any means necessary. You don't want to talk about the idea, you want to tear that person down. And that's socially acceptable because the other side, again, that other side is whatever other side you want, is seen as dangerously misguided, if not malevolent. And all of that, for me at least, really drives home James's description of the tongue as a restless evil, set on fire by hell itself. We take James and we apply it to all people of faith, and not just teachers. James's message is a powerful reminder of the power of the human tongue, and the inherent danger in the human voice. Because, and this is something I said a few weeks ago when we were talking about those 8 simple rules, words have consequences. Words represent ideas. They're not just things that we say and then they go away. But they're ideas. And ideas are what drive humanity to either unspeakable evil or to doing good. And that same dichotomy applies to words that we use and ideas that we project as individuals as well. Do we use words to build people up? Or do we use words to tear them down? The words that we use reflect who we are. The words that we use reflect what we believe. And we cannot be loving and grace-filled if we are going to speak with anger and hatred. We can't be forgiving and accepting if we're going to speak with bitterness and suspicion. Whether we're talking about the smallest things or the greatest, whether it's speaking to a member of our family or whether it's speaking to a total stranger. We are speaking to another member of God's creation. We should respect them as such. The words that we use reflect who we are, and the more we use them in a particular way, the more they start to influence our own thoughts. So that if we speak harshly over time, we can become casually callous, quick to anger and slow to forgive. If we speak always in derogatory terms, we can become arrogant, full of ourselves and unable to recognize the worth of others. Those are dangerous things. But James also tells us that if we consciously try to speak kindly, if we use our words judiciously, that too will steer us. If we make an effort to speak lovingly and to speak thoughtfully and to recognize our fellow human beings for who they are, And that can become our nature. We can't do both. We can't be both. James tells us that you can't have a spring that gives out fresh water and brackish water from the same opening. So it's a struggle. For me, it's a struggle anyway. Because I know what the expectations are, and sometimes it seems that circumstances and people are just conspiring against me to push me away from what I should do. They seem to conspire against who I am called to be, and they push me in another direction. They say things that I shouldn't. I speak in anger when I shouldn't. I run out of patience when I shouldn't. And later, in the light of the gospel and with God's grace in my heart, I can look back at what I said and I can say to myself, wow, you really screwed that up. And I'll tell myself to do better next time. And maybe, one day, being on hold with customer service for half an hour, only to be told that they don't know why they sent me a particular letter, won't seem like such a big deal. But not yet. I'm still a work in progress.